Alex Harvey. I like to give a small intro about him before he gets started. He's currently working as a senior manager for Vercel, but who also happens to be your technology sponsor for the event. So thanks Vercel for that. And one might think that he's working in Vercel, and he's going to talk more about Vercels, and we have to connect the ideas to Sitecore, but that's not the case. He's also a Sitecore MVP, and some of the folks who've been to the Sitecore symposium last year. He has also presented in a symposium last year on the new content SDK, supporting the Next.js app routers and stuff. So to begin, right, like it was difficult for me to understand where in his session Vercel ends and where Sitecore begins, or the other way, where Sitecore ends and where Vercel begins. So Alex Abbey is been a very nice position, like where he can coordinate between both the sides and give us the practices or approaches or ideas on the best of both worlds. So, without taking more time, I'll pass it on to Alex. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, hey everyone. I'm really excited to be here at SUGCON and talking about this topic, SitecoreAI development with coding agents in Vercel. Last year at SUGCON, I presented on it was kind of a whirlwind of optimizations inside of 45 minutes. So hopefully today you take away that you don't need to do all the optimizations anymore. You can just delegate them to coding agents. But I already had a great intro. I lead a partner solutions at Vercel. My job is to really make sure that our partners are building the best experiences that they can with Next.js, Vercel, and Sitecore. I've been on and off in the community for like 10 or so years. Before Vercel, I was doing consulting in like the Sitecore space. So excited to kind of bring it all together in this presentation today. Quick agenda. What I'll go over is I'm going to talk about Vercel at a high level. Things change all the time at Vercel in terms of what we're building. And also, if you haven't used Vercel, this will be a good kind of overview of what we do. And then before getting right into the agents, I'm going to talk about Next.js and Content SDK because the agents are really interacting with that stack. So I'll talk about why this is a great stack to build on for Sitecore. And then after that, I'm going to show how you can use V0's or Vercel's product V0, which is a coding agent with Sitecore. And then I'm going to talk about skills. Skills kind of is a coding agent term, but then also a community that we've created called skills.sh, which you can go to like right now to basically browse skills to make building with Next.js and Sitecore very easy. But first, Vercel. So Vercel's been around since 2015. Our mission is to really just help businesses build the best products that they can. We've been partnered with Sitecore since 2021. We have over 250 customers together. We have our product catalog can be confusing sometimes, but the way I think about it is we have kind of three distinct products. We have a front end cloud. So this is infrastructure that you need to build your front end application, host it so it's really fast and also scalable across the globe. And then we have a very distinct set of products around agentic infrastructure. So this is what you need to build an agent, both like the framework, like the code that you would write, and then also all the underlying primitives like queues and workflows. And then what you'll see later, I won't talk about too much right now, is V0. So V0 is our coding agent for building web apps. I put on the right-hand side here our open source frameworks. This really is kind of, I'd say, like the thing that differentiates Vercel versus other hosting providers or other developer experience platforms. We're rooted in open source. We created Next.js. We have the teams behind Nuxt and Svelte at Vercel. It's really important to us that we're building tools that you love to build with. And then when you're ready, you can bring them to Vercel and it's a great experience. To help break down Vercel a little bit more, I segmented into like two areas of products. We have a developer experience platform. This is basically tools for developers to collaborate really, really easily. So for example, if you point Vercel to a Git repository, every single commit that you make, regardless of the branch that you're on, gets a unique URL just for that change. You can share that URL amongst your other engineers with colleagues, stakeholders, clients. They can drop comments using a term called preview comments, basically directly on the web app as if it's a shared document. Those comments get sourced directly to a backlog. You can burn through those issues as if it was a normal project backlog. And then you can just, when they're all cleared out, ship directly to production. So really great tooling around collaboration. And then probably what we're best known for in this room certainly is our managed infrastructure. So we have serverless compute that's highly optimized and efficient. We have web application firewall support for projects, platform firewall, global CDN. Basically anywhere in the world, someone could reach your application. If you're using Vercel, it's going to be super, super fast. We have a lot of adoption of our tools. Okay. Next.js is up to, I think, over 35 million downloads a week. The largest businesses on earth are using Next.js for their core workloads on the front end. And if you're building an agent, our AI SDK is actually outpacing the adoption of Next.js. It's up to 10 million weekly downloads in a much shorter span of time. So if you're doing any work where you need to connect to an LLM and get a response back, highly recommend checking out AI SDK. You don't even have to use Vercel. It's just a great SDK for getting started. But then we also have, as I mentioned, tons of other open source projects. There's a lot coming out of the agent space. You'll see skills later, but we also have a chat SDK, workflow, sandbox, all really, really cool tools that are like cutting edge around AI. Magic sauce, I'd say, of Vercel is this term, framework defined infrastructure. We also kind of call it self-driving infrastructure. Basically, we don't want you ever doing click ops unless you absolutely need to. We don't want you doing manual configuration of your infrastructure. We just want you implementing the feature requirements, innovating, pushing features out. And when you commit, you just get all the infrastructure for free, secure, and fast. Super, super easy to get started, but also scale. We want our Black Fridays to be extremely boring for our customers, and they typically are. I like this slide because I didn't benefit from Vercel when I was in consulting. I did it the hard way, standing up applications, which was this. It's really hard to stand up an infrastructure for a front end app. It's like shocking to me how complicated it is. You're like figuring out how to host Next.js or whatever your framework is in a VM. You have to then think about how you scale that across different regions, CDN, firewall, thinking about the different rendering strategy. It just is a lot to deal with. Every box is like sprints of work. And this is just to get off the ground. You're not even implementing business requirements yet. And that's the easiest way to kind of frame up Vercel. You just commit your code. Everything else is handled for you. If you want to get in there and tweak your firewall or your region availability or your failover, you can certainly do that. But we really try to provide it all out of the box in the best settings for you right away. We care about this for really good reason. We're obsessed about performance, really good reason. Faster your site is, the better your conversion rate is going to be, the higher your revenue. We focus so much on developer iteration in our DX platform because if you're iterating, that means you're pushing new features and your product is much better. And in terms of total cost of ownership, if you don't have to do click ops anytime, you just want to scale up a serverless function, you're going to spend all that time on other things and your costs are going to come way down. This isn't like an experiment. It's not just reserved for startups. The largest companies on earth are using Vercel for this exact model. Meta uses Vercel to prioritize their own product development instead of infrastructure. And they're using Vercel now for some of its core workloads so that they don't have to worry about it. It's the same value for Sitecore. We want to provide, and this is why we partner with Sitecore, we want to provide faster time to market, better velocity around how quickly you're changing or shipping changes to your front end. But we still know it's really important to have personalization, fast page speed. So we've partnered with Sitecore. We have accelerators with Sitecore and resources so that this is extremely easy to go through. Hardly a technical diagram, I'd say, but this is where we sit in the stack. You would have a user on the front end trying to access a page. That page would be Sitecore page, probably using Next.js and the Content SDK. Content SDK accelerator template is going to do a few things for you without you having to configure anything. So it's going to handle multi-site redirects, personalized integration. But then you have the engine, which is kind of Next.js in there. So you can have control over nested layouts. You're going to have the option of setting up pages or standalone API routes to run a server-side code if you have to integrate with another service. And then this is composable. So you can just pull from Sitecore as you would any GraphQL API. If you have your own services too, it's easy enough to integrate directly into this stack. So this is where I'm talking about Content SDK. I've connected with probably most of you in the past around probably Next.js pages router. But it's really exciting. And there was a kind of a preview of this at Symposium is app router support with Next.js. So in the past, the Next.js pages router was the kind of like the standard architecture that you would use with Sitecore JSS. And pages router was great. I love pages router. You can have perfectly good applications with pages router. But app router is the newer architecture, which really is going to be an even bigger unlock for performance and dynamic functionality. And now that Sitecore Content SDK is released and GA, you're going to be able to bring both Sitecore and app router together. There's a lot to app router. I'm going to hit the 4 main reasons why I think you should probably use Content SDK and app router. Um, also come. I have a course at the end. I'll also show you if you want to learn more. But the gist is React Server Components is supported in App Router and is probably the biggest unlock. It's going to make your site more performant, so good for SEO, Core Web Vitals. There's a few reasons for why it's more performant, but bundle size is the big one. It's going to bring down how much data you're actually sending to a user's browser. There's much better cache control and revalidation in App Router, which I know can be kind of tricky in Sitecore world. So I'll get into more specifics on that in a bit. And then there's streaming in suspense. This isn't a Next.js concept. This is a React concept. It's basically a way of like dynamically rendering content inside of like a static shell. I'll talk about it more, but it's great for performance. And then automatic fetch deduplication is basically one of many optimizations that App Router does to make it more performant doing data requests out of the front end application. Server components, client components. This can be a confusing concept, especially if you're just learning React for the first time. How I think about it is if you use Next.js and with JSS, you were using Pages Router, everything on your application, the front end, was what we call a client component. You're sending some JavaScript bundle across the wire from your server to the user's browser. That JavaScript bundle then has to get loaded and is used to hydrate the application so you can actually interact with it. This happens even if you statically generate the page. You still need to get that bundle to the user's browser. That's fine, but it takes up time. It costs money to send that data over. And that's why React Server Components are so powerful. So React Server Components are actually rendering the server component as it implies on the server, but then only the HTML is sent. You don't need to send the actual JavaScript bundle with it. So that's great for a couple reasons. One, the browser doesn't have to wait for that bundle. And then 2, you're not sending, megabytes of data over the wire to your user's browser. So costs are going to come down. You can still have the benefits of client components, which is like a rich interactable app with client-side behavior, and you can actually interleave the two concepts together. So it's a powerful architecture, but yeah, it does take a little bit of kind of reading up on the concepts. The other thing with React Server Components is this is how you use streaming in suspense. These are not Next.js terms. This is really just React terminology. Um, these two go hand in hand. The concept is like, let's say you have a page in Sitecore where you want articles to be personalized for the user. You instead of doing some sort of set of incantations on the front end to do a client-side fetch out to get that data and then render it, what you can do is just annotate on your page what's called a suspense boundary. So basically, it's an element, and then that suspense boundary tells Next.js that that's a hole on your app, and anything within that is actually going to run on the server and then stream to the front end when it's ready. So in the personalized article example, what you would do is you'd basically put the articles instead of a suspense boundary. The rest of the page would render immediately for the user, so it's super fast. And then that data fetch for the articles comes after the fact and then streams to the front end. So it's bringing dynamic behavior with static performance. The thing I like the most, I mean, I like I'm into optimizing sites, but what I like and what I'm trying to solve the most is how to do caching in a much better way. And App Router is great. So this is like a code snippet. It's somewhat simplified, but I think the concepts and the structure is going to be fairly standard. Let's say that you had in that article example, you wanted to cache those articles for some amount of time. Or you just wanted to cache them forever and only update it when the content actually gets published. There's a whole new API in Next.js 16, which is the latest version with App Router to make that possible. What you would do is this would be a component. You could also do it in a server API, but you would annotate in that component, use cache. which is basically a directive that tells Next.js that we're going to cache this component. So it's in some form or method. You're going to specify a cache life. I just put max and basically saying like, hey, cache is forever. And then you're going to do the work of actually getting data into this component. So here I've simplified it to just call like get article slug. I'm awaiting because behind the scenes, this is doing a fetch for the data. I'm getting that article back. And then further below, I can set a cache tag or send an array of tags. And I can provide the ID of whatever that article was. So this is like simple in concept, but like super powerful. Because I know if any of you have tried to hook up automatic validation with Sitecore, JSS, and Pages Router, you were probably trying to rebuild a relative URL where like the multi-site slug is in there, and you probably spent hours realizing that that has to be part of it. And it's really tricky. But now all you have to do is just set it to a GUID. You don't even know what the GUID is for. As long as you know if it renders on the page, you can set the cache tag. And then later you can call revalidate tag from anywhere. And then that page updates. Fetch duplication. So this is just, again, another example of like optimizations that happen behind the scenes with App Router. You can imagine like if you have server-side code and you're doing a fetch out, the exact same fetch out for data, and it's the exact same parameters, you don't want to do it twice. Normally, you might have to keep the context in your head around the application to know that you should use a cached or memoized version of that function. But with Next.js, it handles it for you. So you don't have to keep that in your head. You can just implement the component the way that you want, and then you're done. So that's a crash course in App Router. But I know there's probably a lot of questions. Like I've grossly oversimplified the process of integrating it. How would you even migrate from Pages Router, JSS to Content SDK? Like what's the upgrade situation like on this new architecture? These patterns are cool, but they're new. I don't know React potentially. So there's just a lot of risk in this sort of thing. How do you tackle this? Um, Last year, I was basically trying to provide resources and guides on it, but this year you can just use coding agents, which are really, really good now at solving these problems. And there's two that I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about V0. V0 is more capable than it was just a couple months ago, which is great for integrating with Sitecore. And then I'm going to talk about skills, which is basically like agnostic way across your coding agents to just like equip them on Next.js and Sitecore knowledge. I'm going to show skills off in the context of Claude Code, but also if you're using other coding agents, they will still apply. All right, so first V0. If you haven't used V0, V0 is an agent for building apps and also agents. Agents building agents. It's super easy to get started. You just prompt what you want. You'll get a preview of what that application is, and you iterate on that. Hence why we named it V0. And then when you're ready, you can ship to production. V0 is built on Vercel infrastructure and tools. The output that you get, the application you build in V0 is actually a Vercel application at the end of the day. So these can be, again, really resilient scalable applications if you get them to that final state. This is an example of how you get started, not even Sitecore specific. I'm just asking to build a modern version of Disney.com. I'm not giving it a ton of guidance here. I just want to see like what it comes up with. But V0 is agentic, so it actually goes through a multi-stage process of creating a plan. It will actually go ahead and scaffold up some content for me. It knows about Disney, so we're going to see how good it decides to create this homepage. And then when it's kind of done with the planning, it actually creates React components, adhering to best practices that the Vercel team has put into the tool over the last year or so. It will review it as well, test to make sure that it's rendering properly. And then when it's done, it's going to give us a preview that we can actually interact with. So give this a second to finish up the testing here. And then it should put in here Disney. I did this generation. I thought it was almost hilariously too good. It knew that there were entertainment options, that there's hotels, that there's in-park experiences. I thought the design was more or less what I want, but maybe I want to do some more changes. Really easy to do that. Like for example, I don't like this gold color. I could just change it to purple. And again, what's nice about V0 is like Whereas other tools may not be super knowledgeable or trained on web best practices, V0 is. So it knows, for example, like you don't want to change a color by going to every single component and changing a hard coded purple or gold color to purple. It's going to look for the theme and then just change the theme, and then everything will be reflected on the front end. So this is like kind of V0 101. But teams use V0 for a number of different um, use cases. You can use it for full stack apps. I mean, the application we just saw is mostly a front end application, but if you wanted a full stack application where there's front end and back end code, you can do it. V0 actually runs in a brand new sandbox runtime, basically a VM for you to run whatever type of application you want. You can import existing repositories. We'll see this in a second when I show the Sitecore example. If you have custom components, like maybe you have a design system that you've curated over the last 3 years, you can bring those into V0 and iterate on them either standalone or with an integrated application. And then you can go from the design in V0 straight to a pull request. So like you can give your designers V0, have them create the components, commit that to the same repository your developers are in, and then they can start integrating those. It's very collaborative. It's kind of collaborative by default. Everything behind V0 now is also backed by a Git repository, so that those changes that we saw, they happened quickly, but they were actually also persisting commits into a repo. So for the next example, I'm going to show how you can use V0 Sitecore. I'm going to import an existing repo. I took the sync starter kit basically as it is, that was integrated already with a Vercel project. I'm going to connect it in V0 just by importing the repo itself. And then I'm just going to ask V0 to do some changes. We're going to change the theme. I'm going to have it update one of the accordion components, and then I'm going to have it scaffold out an entire search page. And then when I'm done, I'm going to open a PR from V0, and then you'll see how that kind of connects back to Vercel. We'll get a preview deployment for that change. And then if I'm the engineer, I don't even need to know it came from V0. I just see that there was a commit that was made and I can review it. So same process, except I'm going to import from GitHub, and then I have this starter kit in my organization around content SDK example. This was tied to an existing Vercel repo. So it's actually, this is where it exists in Sitecore, just to show you like this is in fact actually in Sitecore. But I'm going to flip back to V0 in a second here. Yeah. So this gets imported. We have the full interactable experience in V0. I can go obviously down to the home page. I can go to the detail pages to view the speakers. And what happened here at the very beginning is this project was already hosted on Vercel. So I imported the repo, but it also found the Vercel project and the environment variables. So if I go to the settings, you can see I'm connected to the Vercel project here. And if I go to GitHub, here's the repo. And then the environment variables were plugged in. So I didn't skip a step. That was just automated for me when I imported. Next, I paste in a prompt. The gist is I want to change it a bit. I want to have like a dark mode, more elegant, like kind of black and gold theme. This takes a little while, so I speed it up. It's going through every component actually to see what it needs to change, and then it gives us this updated version. So somewhat similar, but it's found this new dark design. Again, I can go through and kind of see how all the changes were made. And then maybe I want to get really specific with one component. So I can go down to like the accordions, for example, here, and I just want to make this more condensed. So I say, let's actually decrease the size of the accordion content. So maybe I can fit more in there. And then I kick this off. I'm not telling it where the accordion component is. It could just find it in the repository, and then you'll see it condenses a little bit. If I had more time, I'd probably have it change a little bit more, but that's one change. And then now a big change. There's no search page on this starter kit. So I'm going to get started with just kind of implementing a new hard-coded search page, which then I could hook up into Sitecore and handle like kind of the integration after the fact. So I say, okay, there isn't a search page there. Let's scaffold one up. It cooks for a while, finds where the routes are. It actually creates some content for me as well for the products. And then when I'm done, I can just go to the search routes. And then we have find your perfect sounds. The products are here. At this point, I could begin like maybe getting really specific with individual pieces of that component. In V0, you can also kind of go over to code mode. We have a full embedded VS Code integration. So I can actually go to the search page here and see all the code that was written, as well as like the dependence components. And if it looks good, I can open a PR. This PR, if I click it, takes me now to the repo on GitHub. You can see all the changes that it kind of made in succession there. And then I can click preview. So this gives me a link off of V0. This is now a preview deployment on Vercel. I could share that with like the client, for example. They might drop a comment like this image makes no sense now that we're in this dark mode theme. So we can swap that out. That change gets piped back to my repo, and then it actually blocks the deployment until I'm resolved. So if I'm the developer now, I actually kind of get alerted that these changes have happened and I need to address them. And I could always just go back to my repo or my preview and see what's listed there. So that's really quick how you can use V0 with Sitecore. I'm happy to talk about it at the booth, but also an easy way to learn more is to just get started yourself. So if you go to v0.app, this QR code just takes you to v0.app. We have a coupon code SUGCON-agent where you get $20 of token spend. V0 is free. You can actually get started without the coupon, but this gives you a little bit more to play with if you want to test it out with Sitecore. All right, next, skills. So skills is obviously a common term. I'm talking specifically about skills.sh. This is a community that Vercel has started around sharing skills between developers, to make it really easy to enhance your coding agents. But first, just to level set, what are our skills like in general, without skills.sh? So skills is a way for you to provide persistent context or rules to your coding agent, like Cloud Code or Copilot. And they're basically structured files that live in your repository. So most often it's going to be, or I've only seen it be markdown files. So for example, on the right-hand side, this is the starter kit that I just showed the project. And at the top is a .agents file /skills. And I have a Next.js best practices skill. And it talks about async patterns, bundling data patterns, and things like this. So this provides details on how to build, not what to build, but how to build. And it can be specific around certain tools, CLIs, or APIs. You can write your own skills if you have a particular type of pattern that you'd like to follow. And it's gonna make it much more consistent, the output from your coding agents, because you don't have to provide all this context every single time you tell your coding agent to do something. So that's what skills are. Skills.sh is a web application you can go to. It's free. It's just an ecosystem for finding and installing skills. So this is a community of skills. It's curated often by the companies that are actually maintaining these frameworks. So there's a Vercel set of skills. There's an Anthropic set of skills. I think we have like 50 or more official maintained collections. And then if you want to use them, all you have to do is run a command, npx skills add, and then you pass in the URL to wherever that skill resides, usually on GitHub. It's agnostic, so you will have an option when you install a skill to specify if it should be installed for Cloud Code, Codex, or all of them. Or if you have a coding agent that's custom, you could also do that. Now, how do you actually use skills with Sitecore? Well, in Content SDK 2.0, they release skills for interacting with the Content SDK. So there's actually Sitecore skills that you can use. And Vercel has a ton of maintained Next.js skills around App Router. So what you can do is just bring those both together in your repository, and you can start letting your code agent just have all this context and knowledge on best practices for both Next.js and Sitecore. So this example, I'm just going to show how you can get started. This is skills.sh. This is what it looks like. This is basically a leaderboard on the homepage of all the different skills, the most popular ones. But you can go to the official tab and you can see Anthropics at the top. We have Vercel in here as well as among many others. And I'm just going to show you like the Vercel Labs org is where most of ours reside. Agent skills is where I go most often. We have like a React best practices, Next.js best practices. Web design guidelines are great. It's not even like React specific. It's just like what you should do for a web application. So this gives me a command at the top that I can just run in my terminal, which I'm going to do here in a second. So this is my starter kit with Sitecore, just showing that this is in fact actually the starter kit. And then I have my terminal open, and what I'm going to do is just paste in 4 sets of skills. These are all Vercel skills around Next.js best practices. This is just going to rip through, install all these markdown files basically in that .agents folder. And then when I'm done, or when this is done, I'm going to clear and then install the content SDK skill. So this is this content SDK skill from Sitecore. This is going to let me do things like register components straight from my coding agent. So I'm going to now run Claude, which is the harness that I'm using. And then the first thing I'm going to do is actually run the web design guidelines skill. So this is going to actually, I'm going to tell it, review every single component on the Sitecore application and tell me what needs to be improved in terms of accessibility or best practices around general web design guidelines. So this takes a little bit, so I speed it up. But it goes through all the components, and then it's going to give me a kind of like itemized list of this. These are the suggestions. These are the 7 most common issues that we saw that you should consider making changes to. So this is all the recommendations, and then at the bottom you'll see there's like 7. So missing form labels. There's some on-click handlers that could be better handled. Good place for me to start improving my app is right here. I could just ask Claude, for example, to fix these. I could go back through and also see all the individual examples. But next what I'm going to do is actually start a new session, and I'm just going to show you how easy it is to invoke the Constant SDK skill. All you got to do is do /Constant SDK. There's 5 available. I'm going to do just like, I don't know, component registration. And then this actually would walk me through step by step doing component registration. And I haven't installed any other utilities in that or in that repo. So that's skills. And really, if you want to get started, I mean, I have a QR code, but it's pretty simple. It's just skills.sh. I strongly recommend checking it out. I've greatly changed how my dev workflow has gone. I use skills almost entirely now for all of my changes. But to wrap things up, Content SDK, Next.js is great. App Router, fantastic for having better cache control. You'll have in V0 a new runtime now for doing a full integration with Sitecore. V0 is now able to open PRs to your repo. You can have it as like an actual developer on your team. And you can enable now your agents with persistent knowledge. I actually I show skills, but like there's a skill in there that I use quite often, which is create skill, which is a skill for creating skills. And I use that more than any other one because I just am very particular about how I develop. So I strongly recommend using skills to also create skills. And yeah, use skills.sh. It's great. You might be thinking like, can you just install any skill that anyone has shared? Technically, yes, but we also audit the skills that are in there if you're kind of worried about security. And yeah, there's Sitecore and Vercel maintain skills. Last thing I'll share from a resource perspective is we have a brand new Academy course on Next.js. I think last year I was talking about nextjs.org/learn. That's still a fantastic course, particularly if you're learning Next.js App Router for the first time. We have a new foundations course that's specifically around Next.js 16 and includes brand new functionality like cache components, which is like a set of functionality inside of App Router. This is a great course. If you are interested, check it out. It's available for free. And if you're a partner of Vercel, come talk to me about the booth about certifications. We just started to roll out certifications for our solution partners. And this academy course is basically like where you start. You go through the academy course, and there's a set of projects that you do to basically reinforce these learnings. So if you're interested, come talk to me about it. It's very top of mind for me right now. Yeah, so with that, I'll leave it open for questions. Does anyone have any questions for me? Cool. All right. The mic's coming.
On the app placeholder in Sitecore. There was the disable suspense, but it was deprecated. Is that why was it deprecated, and how would you solve that now then?
You're saying that the placeholder was deprecated?
No, not the placeholder, the disable suspense. So by default, disable suspense was set to true. So even server components were loading with waiting for data. Then um, you had to disable suspense on all of the app router components,
Okay.
or on all the on all the app router placeholders, the app placeholders. Um,
That's a
so
good.
now it's deprecated. So, but how can you enable it then? Do you need to do it by hand or
That's so you're saying it's deprecated in
in the content SDK?
like suspense is deprecated
Yeah,
in the content SDK?
yeah.
There's-
Well, for the some was like,
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's suspense is not deprecated and Next is not deprecated in App Router. It would be like a choice as part of the content SDK. I mean, I've been working with Christian and the open source team on getting a more fully complete version there. I'd have to look at your solution, but like if there's a case for it, we can work out how you can
there you go.
customize there.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
In the V0 demo you were giving with the generating the Sitecore components, is V0 actually aware of Sitecore best practices at this point, or is just given the relationship?
Yeah, so we have yes. Short answer is yes. We even before you could bring in a full repo like this, we actually have been consuming the Sitecore docs for like I think a year and a half now. So the Sitecore documentation is actually part of the training data that goes into V0. And now, I mean, that's fine. I think that helps you get started. But I would say, like with V0, still add skills so that V0 can access them. So, like, I didn't do in that example because it would have been too much. But like, I could have installed the content SDK skills, and then V0 would have that to reference as well. And that gives like basically prompt injects at the moment that you ask V0 to do something with the fresh set of context around Sitecore.
So it's like yes and like it's aware, but also use the skills.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Do we have any other questions? No? Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, thanks
Thank you very
everyone.
much, Alex.